Hi, this is Andre, and thanks for checking out Synthisophy. Synthisophy is integrating the wisdoms of history based on fact and truth into our present culture. Let's take a look today at Chapter 21, Sport, Gestalt, and War. Or, more specifically, Sports, Gestalt, and the Warrior Ethos Gone Wry. Note that the following will be direct quotes from earlier reference sources and new sources, but most of it will be statements added by myself. Why are sports so popular? Why is football so popular? Do they reflect the tribal hunter-gatherer teamwork mentality, the raison d'etre, all for one and one for all? Is that the warrior ethos that made Homo sapiens the dominant species of the planet? Teamwork in sports, in the phrase, take one for the team, is the same as the teamwork mentality of members in the tribe gathering food, hunting prey, or battling in war. Here's an excerpt from the Vietnam War, filmed by Kevin Burns. This is Carl Marlantes, a Marine lieutenant and platoon leader. And I'll be quoting him about his experience in combat in the Vietnam War. In combat, you're scared, you're terrified, you're miserable. But then the fighting starts, and suddenly everything is at stake. Your life, your friends' lives. It's almost transcendent. You're no longer a person. You lose that sense. You're just a platoon, and the platoon can't be beat. And not to mention, there's a savage joy in overcoming your enemy. Just a savage joy. And I think that we make a big mistake if we say, oh no, war is hell. We all know the war is hell story. It is. But there's an enormously exhilarating part of it. That's the warrior ethos. You're no longer a person. You lose that sense. You're just a platoon. It's in our genes. Have you ever thought about why they're called organs? Each of your organs, heart, liver, lungs, stomach, brain, they're all necessary for you to live. That's why they're called vital organs. When all those organs are functioning in unison, the human body, you are alive. You are conscious. And your conscious existence is greater than the sum of the individual cells and organs in your body. That is Gestalt. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And that's the root meaning of organization. As here, an organization that contains the vital organs for your body to function. Those organs in the Army, as referenced by Marlantes, are the single individual, on a team, in a squad, to the platoon, to a larger operational unit, all the way up to the Army as a whole. Those organs are the same as mentioned for the tribe. The individual, the gathering group, the hunting group, other members and groups in the tribe, tribal leaders, and the tribe as a whole. In football, these organs are the same as in the Army and the tribe. Individuals in different positions, including coaches and support staff, functioning as a team on offense, defense, and special teams, and the team as a whole. And each of these teams as a whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Each player acting individually would not be as powerful as acting in unison as the whole team. That's Gestalt. Now, I must disclose, I am a New England Patriots fan. Just letting you know. The New England Patriots have been a dominant force in the NFL since 2002, making the playoffs in 15 of those 17 seasons. One year they were 15-5 and didn't make it to the playoffs. And they won 6 Super Bowls. They have been a dominant force in the NFL for 17 years. Why is that? Bill Belichick answered this question when he said, do your job. Bill Belichick is the brain running the organization, and each player and groups of players are the cells and organs doing their job. They are functioning as a team, an organization, and doing so much better than other NFL teams. The Patriots are doing what the Homo sapiens did 70,000 years ago. Homo sapiens must have outfought and outhunted all other hominid species. This genetically evolved and selected warrior ethos, perhaps prominent at the exit of Homo sapiens from Africa 70,000 years ago, led to the dominance of this human species and the extinction of others. These are the hominids that modern humans are descended from, and it may well be because of the warrior ethos. And that's why sports are so popular today. It's in our ancient warrior ethos. It's in our evolutionary genes. Congratulations to the New England Patriots and fans for winning 6 Super Bowls in 17 years, although their dominance may now be over, getting knocked out of the playoffs in the first round in this 2019 season. Here are statements by Arthur Farrell regarding the following question in the second oldest profession. When humans first learned how to write, they already had wars and warriors to write about. Was prehistoric man aggressive at all, or did he live in an idyllic, peaceful environment, as some believe? Was organized warfare the creation of civilized man, a fiendish byproduct of the emergence of civilization in the ancient Near East? If prehistoric man did wage war, what weapons did he use? Did he fight in organized formations? Or were his conflicts merely skirmishes of the sort that occur among some modern primitive societies? These and many other questions have often been raised, and some authorities still regard them as open and unresolved. Yet archaeological discoveries in the 20th century now make it possible to sharply focus on these controversies. He went on to say, there is no longer any question that prehistoric man behaved aggressively. This fact is attested by the discovery of prehistoric fortifications, weapons, cave paintings, and skeletal remains. Whether this aggressive behavior was biologically instinctive or culturally induced remains a matter of controversy. But by the end of prehistoric times, man was a fighter, capable of waging organized warfare of the sort seen in later historical societies. The earliest civilizations along the Nile and in the Mesopotamian Valley around 3000 BC witnessed a burst of warfare, intensified by the increased power of the new states to marshal troops and pay the high costs of fighting. But organized warfare was not new. It had been practiced for millennia in prehistoric times. So when man first learned how to write, he already had wars to write about. And the following statements will be from War Before Civilization, The Myth of the Peaceful Savage by Lawrence Keeley. Quote, the facts recovered by ethnographers and archaeologists indicate unequivocally that primitive and prehistoric warfare was just as terrible and effective as the historic and civilized version. War is hell, whether it's fought with wooden spears or napalm. Peaceful pre-state societies were very rare. Warfare between them was very frequent, and most adult men in such groups saw combat repeatedly in their lifetimes. As we have seen in the American colonies, the very deadly ambushes, raids, and surprise attacks on settlements by the Native American Indians were the forms of combat preferred by tribal warriors to the less deadly but much more complicated battles so important in the civilized warfare. In fact, primitive warfare was much more deadly than that conducted between civilized states because of the greater frequency of combat and the more merciless way it was conducted. As stated, peaceful pre-state societies were very rare. Warfare between them was very frequent, and most adult men in such groups saw combat frequently in a lifetime, which may be reflected now by the popularity of sports and sports fanatics. With this popularity and fanaticism in sports reflected today in the warrior ethos and the tribe, all for one, one for all, it seems quite probable that war played a significant part in the extinction of other hominid species and the rise and dominance of Homo sapiens. How else could one species conquer the world? Could a sports game now between two arch rivals reflect two different Paleolithic tribes and different species let's say Homo floresiensis and Homo sapiens, fighting in battle to the death for survival, Homo sapiens must have outfought, outhunted, and outbred all other hominid species. This genetically evolved and selected warrior ethos, perhaps prominent at the exit of Homo sapiens from Africa 70,000 years ago, led to the dominance of this human species and the extinction of others. Are the malignant societal cancers referred to earlier a result of this genetic warrior ethos, as described by the historians just quoted? Is this warrior ethos the means by which Homo sapiens left Africa 70,000 years ago and conquered the world to the extinction of other hominid species? Does this warrior ethos explain, as Farrell said, there is no longer any question that prehistoric man behaved aggressively? Organized warfare was not new. It had been practiced for millennia in prehistoric times. When man first learned how to write, he already had wars to write about. And as Keeley said, peaceful pre-state societies were very rare. Warfare between them was very frequent, and most adult men in such groups saw combat repeatedly in a lifetime. After the extinction of all other hominid species, did Homo sapiens continue with this warrior ethos? But not on other hominid species, they were all gone. But on other Homo sapien tribes in their vicinity? At the advent of civilization, did this genetically predisposed ethos express itself? Again, Farrell regarding the Fertile Crescent tribes. The earliest civilizations along the Nile and the Mesopotamian Valley witnessed a burst of warfare, intensified by the increased power of the new states to marshal troops and pay the high costs of fighting. Are such tribes still present today and reflected in the tobacco tribe, the opioid pharmaceutical tribe, and the fossil fuel tribe? It appears, after having conquered all other hominid species, some Homo sapien tribes and this genetic warrior ethos are now killing their own while making billions of dollars with their deceit. This is the warrior ethos gone wry. Perhaps a functional moral democracy based on truth could address this issue. So it appears that we may have evolutionarily selected so it appears that we may have an evolutionarily selected and genetic tribal mentality. Does this predisposed tribal mentality transfer itself to politics? Is it possible that the two political parties represent two tribes battling with each other for survival? Is this why you should never talk about politics, which often leads to highly heated and sometimes fanatical arguments? Which brings in the argumentative theory and the warrior ethos mentioned earlier. The answers may very well be yes. Let's take a long evolutionary view to see why this may be the case. Homo erectus migrated out of Africa 2 million years ago. There was no competition, no other Paleolithic humans or human species. They may have used the basic mammalian approach to survival, a cognitive bias. Don't annihilate your competition, just make a territorial power statement. If it works, fine. If not, just move on to where there's no competition. At that time, Homo erectus was the first Homo species to migrate out of Africa to settle all of Eurasia. So Homo erectus could have used this approach to migrate and settle all of Eurasia over the next 1.7 million years, also evolving into other human species. Over the last 300,000 years, Homo sapiens was evolving in Africa. And 70,000 years ago, that species left Africa with its tribal and warrior ethos to conquer the world. Homo sapiens could migrate to an area with no competition. Homo erectus and other species had already done that, and human species were now settled throughout Eurasia. Homo sapiens had to fight and conquer the already present species. And how did they do that? There, and now are, genetically predisposed, hardwired warrior ethos. Homo sapiens then outfought, outhunted, and outbred other species to become the dominant species to the extinction of others. Homo erectus and others did not have this Gestalt, this warrior ethos. and they went extinct. So is it the Homo sapiens warrior ethos and sense of belonging to a tribe that now overcome our neuroreality? There was only one tribe that was able to dominate the world with its warrior ethos. Now this warrior ethos and sense of belonging to a tribe overcomes reason and logic. The tribal instinct then creates different tribes within the whole country. The two main political tribes we have now are the right and the left, with sub-tribes within each: the alt-right, moderate left, and ultra-left. The alt-right is now capitalizing on this instinct, as are the fossil fuel and tobacco industries, along with pharmaceuticals and big money. Big money threatened to stop funding the Republican Party if they didn't pass the tax reform bill at the end of 2007 that provided a massive tax cut for the super rich and blows up the deficit even higher. The ultra-left wants universal health care for those that have given up salary increases for better health care coverage. I thought the left was in favor of freedom of choice. The ultra-left supports welfare programs for the poor because they may reduce child poverty as well as reducing crime and social problems. In actuality, they become a taxpayer-funded lifestyle passed on through generations. Where's our neuroreality as a nation to let this happen?